Hello Internet Allies, how are you doing? So, let's talk about Hogwarts Houses. So, this video is basically just going to be a random chat, random ramble about Hogwarts Houses and some of my thoughts about the Hogwarts Houses from the Wizarding World from Harry Potter. So yeah, here we go, let's get into it. So, first of all, let's talk a little bit about house bias, basically. So, yeah, even though I think that like everybody has like a soft spot for their own Hogwarts house, for example, you know, I do have a soft spot for Gryffindor. Being in Gryffindor means a lot to me. I don't really think there's really like any one best house. I feel like all the Hogwarts houses have their strengths and weaknesses. And, you know, it's quite frustrating sometimes when I see people be so biased towards their own Hogwarts house, thinking that their own Hogwarts house is like the best Hogwarts house and stuff like that, and all the others fail in comparison and stuff. I'd like to think that like every Hogwarts house is kind of equally great, to be honest. You know, I feel like, you know, you should be happy with whatever Hogwarts house you're in, to be honest. And you should really like try to like mix with like people from all different Hogwarts houses, and also basically, yeah, just basically respect all the values of each other's Hogwarts houses and stuff. Second thing I don't really like what people do with Hogwarts houses is like basically like stereotype certain hobbies towards certain Hogwarts houses. For example, some people might think that just because somebody really likes reading, you know, they'll be a Ravenclaw, or if somebody really likes sports, they'll be a Gryffindor, if somebody really likes cooking, they'll be a Hufflepuff, etc, etc. I'm not really too sure what kind of hobbies are stereotyped with Slytherins, like, to be honest. If you're a Slytherin, please let me know, you know, any hobbies that, you know, are usually stereotypically linked to Slytherins. For me, being a Gryffindor, like, you know, I'd much rather, you know, read a good book than, like, you know, watch sport on the telly or play sport or whatever. I mean, I do go to the gym and stuff like that, but that is probably about the extent of my athleticism, I suppose. I mean, I did really like ice skating when I was younger as well, but yeah. But other than that, I'm not really a particularly like sporty person. And on the flip side of that, they'll think like all athletes are Gryffindors, all people in Ravenclaw, you know, like reading and stuff, and all people in Hufflepuff, they really like cooking, and you know, that's not always really necessarily the case. Like, I think people should be sorted into Hogwarts houses because of, you know, their values, their qualities, and whatnot, rather than just the hobbies and stuff. So the next thought about Hogwarts houses is kind of linked to autism and stuff. So a couple of weeks ago, I saw a comment on a YouTube video about signs of being a Ravenclaw, and somebody commented, like, does being autistic count as a Ravenclaw quality? And I don't necessarily think that it does. Whereas, like, people on the spectrum probably do have a lot of qualities that associate with Ravenclaw, such as like intelligence, creativity, attention to detail, it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, you know, all autistic people will be in Ravenclaw, if that makes sense. I mean, I do have a friend who's on the spectrum who is a Ravenclaw, and she is basically the epitome of Ravenclaw. I do have a tattoo on my chest, actually, which is a Hogwarts crest tattoo, but like all the houses are in different puzzle pieces, which is kind of a Hogwarts crossover with autism, because I'm also autistic and I love Harry Potter. It also means to me kind of a sense of like belonging and being true to myself, and basically just finding out stuff about myself as well. To be honest, I do think like being sorted into a Hogwarts house definitely helps a lot with kind of finding out a lot more about yourself. Going back to basically autism and Hogwarts houses, like, you know, I could kind of see like people on the spectrum being sorted into like all different Hogwarts houses, because, you know, autism is a very diverse spectrum of traits and stuff, and, you know, you have a very diverse range of qualities in each different Hogwarts house. You know, maybe like life would be easier like for people on the spectrum if they were sorted into Hufflepuff, because Hufflepuff's all about acceptance. So people on the spectrum, you know, like generally want to be accepted and understood, and I feel like being sorted into Hufflepuff would be the best chance of that happening. Hufflepuff's also the most inclusive of all the Hogwarts houses and is the least likely to judge, basically, which, you know, would be a very safe, warm, welcoming environment for people on the spectrum to thrive in. However, like, on the flip side of that, you know, I think people on the spectrum, like, sometimes can feel a little bit misunderstood, a little bit outcast sometimes, and I feel like the house that most relates to this is Slytherin. So maybe there are some people on the spectrum that would be in Slytherin because of this. Slytherins are also perfectionists, and I think they tend to think more analytically than, you know, emotionally. And I think some people on the spectrum can relate to that as well. I also think people on the spectrum can be very, very stubborn as well. I mean, that can tie into both Slytherin and Gryffindor. So last but not least, I'm going to talk about like how autism identifies with my Hogwarts house, Gryffindor, as somebody on the spectrum and in Gryffindor. So Gryffindor, I kind of feel like it may be the least likely to have people on the spectrum identify with, because people on the spectrum don't necessarily like change, they like routine, and Gryffindors are quite spontaneous and adventurous typically. But one thing that both Gryffindors and people on the spectrum are good at is standing up for themselves and staying true to themselves and standing up for things they believe in. People on the spectrum can also be very stubborn at times, so Gryffindor again. I think like all these things, you know, apply to me as well, to be fair. So a couple of reasons why I think people on the spectrum wouldn't all just be in the same Hogwarts house is because I do think it's important for people on the spectrum to like mix and meet people who aren't on the spectrum as well, and meet people who are different from them, because in that way, like, people who aren't on the spectrum can learn a lot more about people who are on the spectrum, and people who are on the spectrum can learn more about how people who aren't on the spectrum tick and how they function as well. And I do think it is kind of important, you know, for people to like mix with different people. I think if all people on the spectrum were in the same Hogwarts house, they wouldn't get as much of a chance to mix with people who are different from them, who aren't on the spectrum. So a thought about Gryffindor. I'm a bit confused as to why basically they have like bravery and courage listed as two separate Gryffindor traits, whereas I kind of feel like they mean the same thing, to be honest. It's kind of a bit confusing to me, so yeah. So that's it for me, guys, about my chat/ramble about Hogwarts houses. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know any thoughts you have about the Hogwarts houses down below in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a like. I hope you have a wonderful day, guys. Until next time, keep smiling. Bye!